After ending the drought, Sporting had to defend their title as national champions. They would be going to the Champions League, a tournament they hadn't seen since the 1997-98 season. Sporting's squad would see big changes as Di Franceschi returned from his loan move. Duché, Vidigal, Saber, Quiroga and Ayew would leave the club, and Sporting would bring in João Pinto, the man that had terrorized them in the 6-year game at Alvalade and spent 7 years with Benfica. This was a pretty important coup, as it bolstered the attack as well as bringing a well-known name from their rivals. The season kicked off with the Super Cup against Porto at the Estádio das Antas, a rematch from the cup final that had just taken place 3 months earlier. Acosta would give Sporting the lead with a great run and shot that beat the goalkeeper. Porto, however, would tie the game in the 89th minute with a thunderous shot from Dimitri Alenichev, meaning that the game would end as a 1-1 tie. The second leg in 2001 would decide who would win the Super Cup. Sporting kicked off the league with a win against Farense at Alvalade, where recently signed João Pinto scored to get all 3 points, and Sporting would win in the 4-1 demolition of Vitória de Guimarães with the help of an Acosta hat-trick ahead of a tough game against Braga. Bino would open the scoring for Sporting in the 21st minute with a powerful shot. However, in the second half, Miklos Feher would tie up the game with a tap-in past a badly positioned Peter Schmeichel, and Braga braced thanks to the slippery hand of Schmeichel that would hand the win to Braga in a 3-2 final result, handing Sporting their first defeat of the season, which put them 5th after 3 games. Sporting would kick off their European campaign in the Champions League with an Iberian clash against Real Madrid at Alvalade, and Sporting would make their mark by taking a 2-0 lead with goals from Sapint from the corner and then De Cruz from the free kick, both set pieces to stun the Spaniards. That would be where the game peaked for Sporting, as a goal from Roberto Carlos in the 50th minute with a free kick of their own and an unlucky own goal from Luis Jorge would mean the Sporting would only get a point from a match that they looked comfortable in, proving the 2-0 leads were really the most dangerous leads. Alverca would once again prove to be a thorn on Sporting's side, as they rescued a goal in the 90th minute to hold Sporting to a 1-1 draw in the league. And in the Champions League, Bayer Leverkusen would score 3 goals in 12 minutes to once again turn the tide in a game Sporting was leading. And this time Sporting would get nothing to show for it as they lost 3-2. A 2-0 win against Gil Vicente will calm the nerves and stop the winless run, which came back immediately after, as Sporting got stunned 3-1 by Spartak Moscow in a game that they were once again leading and had nothing to show for it. After the first round of games in the group stage, Sporting sat last with only a point to their name despite leading in each of the 3 games played. The wins would return to Sporting as a brace from Acosta would give them the win against Salgueiros, and then a thrilling 4-3 victory with all but 1 goal being scored in 16 minutes in the second half. Sporting were up to 3rd, just 2 points behind the leaders, with a game against Porto looming. Sporting resumed their Champions League campaign completely uninterested. Being blown out 3-0 by Spartak Moscow and 4-0 by Real Madrid to confirm the elimination, Sporting would end up with a measly 2 points to their name after 6 games, after a 0-0 draw with Bayer Leverkusen. The league was now the focus. Despite finding every way possible to throw out a win in the Champions League, that didn't matter anymore. Sporting could take the lead with a win against Porto, something that they did last season, and they were hoping that things would go the same way. However, Porto would find a way to win, scoring just 1 goal to take the win, kicking Sporting back down to 4th, now 5 points behind the top with a lot of work to do. After that, Sporting would go on a win streak, getting 3 wins against Beira-Mar, União de Leiria and Estrela da Amadora, which put Sporting all the way to 2nd, 3 points from the top, ahead of an important game against Boa Vista. Boa Vista would grind the game to a halt, holding the reigning champions to a 0-0 draw, as Sporting saw Porto run away to a 5-point lead once more. Pressure was growing on Inácio. Sporting had 6 losses to their name in just 2 months of football. Ahead of him would be a do-or-die game against Benfica at the Estádio da Luz, the same place Sporting had a great 3-1 victory to qualify to the quarterfinals of the Cup the season before. Benfica had fired manager Jupp Heynckes, and an inexperienced José Mourinho would take charge of Benfica for this game. This should be an easy game for Sporting. Sporting would have this score completely reversed, as Benfica dominated and emerged victorious in the Lisbon derby 3-0. Sporting had a night to forget, and manager Augusto Inácio was fired immediately after. Despite being described one of the happiest men in football after that title win in 2000, he just lasted months shortly after that great win. With the manager role open, many pointed at José Mourinho himself to actually get the job, and they actually got him, according to various sources. Right after Augusto Inácio was fired, there would be a press conference to present the new manager. Or so they thought. What they had instead was outrage. The fans didn't want Mourinho. After all, he and his team had just secured their proud club. Mourinho saw this and quit. Mourinho was Sporting manager for a grand total of 2 hours. Following the storm, Sporting would hire Fernando Mendes, and he did well. Despite a 0-0 draw with Passos Ferreira, Sporting would pick up the win against Belenenses Leixões in the Cup to qualify for the round of 16 heading into 2001. Sporting will get 2 wins in a row against Campeonato Maritimo, and Sporting were comfortably in third. 2 points from the top once again. Despite all the turmoil, the title fight was not off. Then Sporting had a 2-1 loss to Farense, resulting in Fernando Mendes being fired, and Sporting's next manager would be a historic figure for the club, scoring 191 goals in 325 games and picked up 2 league titles as a player. That would be Manuel Fernandes. Obviously management is a different beast to being a player, but it wasn't like he didn't have a history. He was assistant manager with Sporting from 1992 to 1994, so hopes were high. Manuel Sporting would pick up an easy 3-1 victory over Vitória Guimarães on his debut, keeping Sporting in second, but yet 3 points behind Boa Vista, who had been experiencing a great campaign that many had seen coming thanks to their potential shown in previous seasons. While all of this was going on, early in January of 2001, Sporting would start construction on the new Estádio José Alvalade as the country moved towards hosting Euro 2004. This construction ground was the sign of the looming future, a sign of change. Sporting's next game would be the second leg of the Super Cup. Sporting could pick up a trophy and appear steady in the middle of this tumultuous season. The game would end 0-0 and the rematch was scheduled for the end of the year, winner takes all. Despite an alright performance against Porto in the Super Cup, they sure weren't steady. Sporting would lose 2 games in a row, one to Braga again, and then to the eternal thorn Alverca, to rack their 5th loss in the league, and therefore dropping them to 5th. 6 points lost, 6 points behind the leaders. Sporting bounced back with 3 wins in a row, beating Gil Vicente 3-1, a comfortable 5-2 goal fest against Salgueiros, and a routine 2-0 win over Aves. Sporting would be back in third, tied on points with Porto, but still 4 behind the stellar Boa Vista so far. As luck would have it, the very next game would be Porto in the league. While it was scoreless in the first half, the second half was great. Deco opened the score in the 65th minute, and Sporting would stun Porto with 2 goals in mere seconds from Beto and João Pinto. Sporting now had a 2-1 lead. The minutes counted down, and Sporting were looking at a decisive victory. This would be important. They could take the fight to Boa Vista and renew their title as champions. And never mind. With a goal in the dying seconds, Porto would head in a corner to hold the game to a 2-2 draw. Sporting were 2 points behind again. This looked less and less likely as there were 9 games left to play. As luck will have it, the very next game would be Porto again in the cup. This time it would be Beto, not to be mistaken with Beto Costa, opening the scoring, and then Porto tied it shortly after the half-hour mark. The game stayed all the way tied to the 90th minute. This game would be going into extra time. Capucho will get his brace in the 100th minute to put Porto ahead. Sporting just couldn't find an answer and were dumped out of the cup. Out of everything and with the league hanging in the balance, Sporting had just one objective: win. Boa Vista would have a late 1-1 draw against Marítimo. Sporting would reply with a 2-1 win over Beira-Mar. The gap was down to 4. This was going to be neck and neck. Until Sporting lost 2-0 to União de Leiria. The gap was extended to 7. 7 games to go, 7 points behind. Sporting bounced back with a 1-0 win over Estrela da Amadora. Next was a do-or-die game against Boa Vista. They were leading the league on 62 points, Sporting had 55. 7 points behind still. If they lost this game, their title hopes were as good as over. The atmosphere was electric. Boavista were chasing their first ever league title to finally capitalise on the promise they showed for half a decade. Sporting had a couple of missed chances and so did Boavista. Both goalkeepers had to put in the work and Sporting won a penalty. Or so they thought. Both teams gave it their all. This was a war of attrition. Boavista chasing history, Sporting chasing fleeting hope. Tension mounting, shots were had, saves were made. This gripping game was nearing closer and closer to an anticlimactic draw. Something had to give. Sporting season pretty much ended there. 10 points behind with 4 games to play. Sure, it was mathematically possible to overcome this if everyone around them lost, but that was clearly not happening. Sporting's next match was against Benfica, who had replaced Mourinho with 20, and they would return the favour. Sportingistas could at least still celebrate a 3-0 trouncing of Benfica, despite the heartbreaking loss of the week before. Sporting's frustration returned with a 1-1 draw against Belenenses that they only got with a last gasp salvation, but at this point, 2 matches were left to play and the jig was up. Sporting sat in third, 12 points away from Boavista. Boavista would be crowned champions just a week after as they beat AVS 3-0 to secure their first ever league title, as their talent that they had showcased before finally came into fruition. Exhausted and demoralized, Sporting would close out the season with a 3-1 loss to Paços Ferreira, a 1-0 loss to Campo and just because 4th place was looming, a 1-0 win over Maritime to end the roughest season in the club's history. Sporting had lost 15 times in a season, which was their worst ever record. At least Sporting would defeat Porto 1-0 in the Super Cup rematch to end the season on a somewhat of a high note. Sure, it was merely a consolation, but a trophy is a trophy. They needed it after such a long and exhausting campaign. Sporting looked to the 2001-2002 season with optimism, however. They would get themselves a shiny new logo, and with their new stadium well underway, the future was coming, and it looked green.